Well, and I know earlier we kind of went into some childhood traumas and stuff like that.
You want to talk about that?
We can. I'm down.
Tell
It ain't
me.
never been talked about. I remember getting the phone call in jail, and my mom told me, and I hung the phone up, and I just turned around and walked back to my cell. And if you have to cry in jail, you do it in the shower.
We got a great guest, one of the most popular figures in all the entire world. We have Taylor here today. Yes. Oh, I think you're thinking about Taylor Swift. No, that's not it. No, we have the most important Taylor in the world. Taylor Ammons is straight from Nashville, Tennessee, flew up today to be on the Big Fish Cares podcast. He's the owner of Paragon Roofing.
Yep.
And you just told me about how Paragon started, like the name of it.
Yep.
Some like type of superhero thing, right?
That's it. We're the top of the top when it comes to superheroes.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool. So we just got back from lunch. I took him to Permane Brothers. You got your first Permane Brothers sandwich.
Man, they don't tell you because there's two different sizes, and so they don't tell you that the regular is more than enough sandwich. I don't even know how you could do the jumbo sandwich.
How'd I do today?
You did great. You fasted the whole time.
Yeah, I watched,
had a little tea.
I watched,
just watched us.
I watched you and Cody just destroy some food.
Smash some food. We had to bring some back too. Eat it for dinner before we fly home.
Is this your first time to Pittsburgh?
I was trying to think about that. It is, I believe, my first time coming to Pittsburgh. So I liked it. I mean, coming in, flight was fine out of Nashville. Apparently, there's a direct flight from Nashville into Pittsburgh that I just found out about. So that's always good. I just caught a Delta out of Atlanta. And so, but man, I'm pumped to be here. Thank you again. It's a pleasure to be here. I wish I could spend more time, but it's awesome to be able to just see you in person and also come check out your facility and hang out for a little while and just be able to talk.
So it's not very normal, I would say, of people just saying, hey, I'll fly up. I'll shoot up for a couple hours and do a podcast and I'll fly home. So what made you decide to come on the show today?
Well, I've always looked up to you guys a lot. I did some work with you and Joe back in the day, Joe Hughes, shameless plug. But I've always wanted to kind of build a relationship with a lot of people that I look up to in the industry. So that had a lot to do with it. And, you know, I've always kind of been trying to learn as I get a little older. If you have some opportunities, just capitalize on that, because you never know what these relationships and friendships and stuff can build on down the road for either one of us, or the impact that we're trying to make in our personal communities and in the world, so, and in the industry. So it's just great to be able to kind of get to know each other more, and what better spot to do it than in the Big Fish studio.
You have a pretty remarkable story. I've gotten to know you over the last year or two. You have I would say a similar story. We all have different, unique stories, but you come from an interesting place. You want to share a little bit about your background, and then I want to get into a couple questions.
Yeah, for sure. So, I was born and raised down in Florida. My parents ended up separated at about 11 years old. We moved up to Georgia. My dad was military. Parents did joint custody throughout our middle and high school careers. And then I was raised in one of those families that you make good grades, you go to college, you get a career, you save money, you retire. And I was never, I don't want to say I was never good in school. I just never applied myself. It was never interesting to me. I enjoyed playing sports. I enjoyed teamwork and competition, but when it came to actually like going through and doing schoolwork, it was never something I wanted to do. But I was raised that we go to school, we make good grades, we get into college, and we get a career and we make money. So after high school, I was supposed to go military, because that was kind of what was expected next as a man in our family, and my dad was military, so I was supposed to go military. And then, like, I think it was a day before I was supposed to go to Atlanta for MEPS, where they'll actually do your medical like entry processing, whatever it stands for. I decided at that point I was like not gonna go in. So I know that kind of dealt a blow to my dad. But I went down to college, and that was when I realized that the professors don't really care if you go to class or not. You know, and so I was like, man, I'm having a lot more fun partying, and like I'll just go to class when it's convenient to me. So the caveat to that is you don't go to class, you don't pass your tests, and you don't pass the class. Therefore, you don't pass school. So I ended up on academic probation in college, moved back home, and was still kind of living that party life. I was getting into my early 20s, and just everything was a party. Life was a party. I enjoyed how it made me feel. I enjoyed going out drinking. I enjoyed using drugs, smoking weed. It was just something I liked to do. I just wanted to party, but I never had any money. I always struggled, couldn't hold a job. And so it took me a long time. I worked in, I think getting into automotive sales was a big one for me, because it helped kind of open up who I was as a person, kind of get me some communication skills, some negotiation skills, and that ended up leading me into the roofing industry. So I've really enjoyed roofing and home services. I like being able to help clients out. I like being able to go in and, know what their problem is, maybe even before I see it, just based on them describing it to me. So I really enjoy being able to help people out. And so now, thankfully, and I'm sure we'll dive into this, but January 23rd, I'll have 2 years of sobriety from any alcohol. So that's been absolutely life-changing for me. And then, as I'm sure we'll get into, is just kind of that spiritual and mental journey that you kind of go on once you start doing a lot more personal development stuff. So that's what I'm so excited about. I mean, the story and stuff is cool. It was kind of the conduit to get to where I am today, but now it's time to use more of the position that I'm putting myself into in the industry to try and help those that are still in those dark times.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Why January 23rd? Why was that the day?
Well, it was supposed to be 97 days before that. And so I'd actually...
Why is that?
Well, so at RoofCon 2 years ago, it would have to have been 2 years ago. So RoofCon 2 years ago, I was in the height of all of my drinking, and I didn't even realize how much I was drinking at the time. But when I'd get home from work, I'd go by the liquor store, and I'd get like a 1 liter bottle of Tito's, a jug of cranberry juice, and a 12-pack of seltzer beers. And so I'd go home, mix a drink up for my wife, and then between her and I, she would have a couple drinks, but not as much, and then I would polish off the rest of the bottle. I'd usually try and leave a little bit left. Sometimes I'd get the 175s if I wanted it to stretch for 2 days, but I'd leave like a little bit in the 1 liter bottle, usually kill all of the seltzers, because when I would wake up the next morning, I was shaking so badly, and I would just like violently throw up for the first couple hours I was awake, and so I would save that much vodka so that I could swig it. That would get me to where I could actually get ready for work, and then would do some work from home until about 11 o'clock when a burger spot opened at the front of the neighborhood. And I'd go hang out up there, drink 2 to 6 double Tito's with cranberry, and then run sales appointments the whole afternoon. So went out, did some, and so when we were in Orlando, I got up. It was actually the meet and greet with, I think it was Ed Milet or John Maxwell, one of the two. My business partner was down in Orlando with me at the time, and we're staying at the Rosin Center. And so I'd gotten up, same routine, started getting ready, started getting sick. And so I told him, I'm like, hey man, just go ahead and go. And he's like, hey, are you good? And I was like, it's super normal, man. It's been going on about 3 months. And I was like, I just throw it for the first couple hours, and then I'll be fine. I'll meet you down there. And this time it never stopped. And so it actually, that 2 hours turned into it was like 16 or 18 hours of just, I was in convulsions and then throwing up, and then I'd be back in this hotel bed, and I was either ice cold or burning up. And so when I was ice cold, I'm under all these covers and just shaking, and then it would just immediately go hot. So then I'd go get cool rags and try and put them all over me. So I finally just decided to lay in the tub and let some cool water run on me. And then when I got cold, I'd kick it to hot and, let the hot water run on me. And so I remember laying in that tub, and I'm like, man, that something has to change, because, the arrests, the drugs, the apparent overdoses that were never because anybody that's done drugs, that you've overdosed before. Like if you're throwing up because you were snorting heroin, that's technically an overdose. Now it might not have been like you were in ICU, but in my opinion, anytime that drug is making you
black out,
then I think that borderlines on your overdoses. But that truly felt like a rock bottom. I'm like, I'm in convulsions. I'm missing a meet and greet. I'm moving through in my career, and I'm not going to get to go do something that was pretty important to me because of the condition that I'm in now. So that's when it truly felt like a rock bottom. And So I knew my game plan was leave Orlando, get home, get some blood work done. Let's see what's going on. So blood work got done. Probably 2 days.
What'd you think was going on? A little bit too much alcohol in your system?
Man, I thought I was just drunk, man. Like I thought I was.
Did you think there was something else going on other than just you were like an alcoholic? Like were you tricking yourself into thinking like blood
I think I was hoping because like at the time I was doing steroids too. And
oh really?
This hasn't even made it onto a podcast. So this is pretty dope. Yeah. So I was working out a lot at the time. Yeah, Dave. And so I was working out pretty good at the time. And when I say pretty good, it was like when I wasn't just getting completely hammered. And so I was doing like some MPP and DECA mixed together with my testosterone because
I don't know anything about steroids, unfortunately.
I'm on testosterone replacement therapy, which is a pretty normal thing. But when you're adding in anabolic steroids behind that, like I got big. I'll have to show you a picture.
So you were trying to get like
I was trying to get jacked up, man. Yeah. And so I was thinking that had to be it. It was everything but my drinking. It was not the drinking. I knew
how long were you like that for? Like, would you? So were you always were you always drinking like that, or?
I started drinking at 15, and then we drank pretty heavily through high school, and then
was it every day like that?
It was yes.
What was the biggest stretch you think you ever had in that 15-year period where like you didn't drink? Like, was there ever did you ever go a week without drinking?
I would make myself do little sabbaticals, as I would call them. So I would do like a little 30-day sabbaticals and stuff.
And you could maintain those?
I could do those, but it was usually not fun. Like RoofCon that was in Houston a few years ago, I was on one of those little 30-day sabbaticals, and I was like in a terrible mood all the time.
Did everybody know that, was this something you kept in the closet? Was this something that you actively, did your wife always know, or your girlfriend, or did your mom know? Did your business partner know? Does everybody just know this is Taylor?
I think to a certain extent, I just don't think they knew how much it was. I definitely hid those morning swigs because I remember being in the car business and I'd literally had to go pick this dude up that wrecked his car on the side of the road because he was so drunk. I've got a bag of blow in my pocket. Not now, then. And so I had a bag of blow in my pocket going to pick this guy up. And I remember I slept maybe an hour that night. And he'd passed out on the couch, and I remember sitting in the car fixing to head into the dealership the next morning and watching him swig vodka in his kitchen at 6 a.m. And I remember thinking, man, could you imagine being that far gone? As I've got drugs on me, And so I'm like, man, could you imagine being that far gone? And it might have been 12 months later, I'm that same dude. So when it actually caught up to me, it went from I could casually drink to I black out regularly. I mean, I was a blackout drinker. If I drank, it was going to be to the point where I blacked out or I hadn't succeeded was the way that I always wanted to look at it. But it very easily went from I'm a blackout drinker to I can't function without it. It happened very quickly.
What kind of talk to me about some of the painful parts, the relationships maybe that got hurt, some of the bad things that were a result of you being an alcoholic over the last 15 years.
That list might be shorter if we talk about the relationships I didn't try and destroy, but no, in all seriousness, it did a lot of damage. I mean, it did damage not only at home, but to where, and nobody's ever really said this to me, but I know family didn't really want to be around me as much because they knew all right, it's Thanksgiving, Taylor's going to be blacked out by noon. So there was a lot of relationships like that.
But you told me your family always was drinking though.
They were always drinking.
Were they responsible drinkers? Is that is there do you think that is there a difference?
I personally think there is because I see some people that now I don't think we were a family that drank responsibly. I think for the most part, but we would all tie them on, our friend group and stuff like that with my parents. My dad, I would always say, was able to be a casual drinker, but even casual was still, we're going to have a few cocktails a night. So drinking 6-7 days a week was not a strange thing when I got older. Now, growing up as a kid, I really don't remember drinking in the house. I remember when we would go on family vacations, seeing that it pretty much surrounded around drinking. It's hey, we're all getting together, we're all drinking. But I think some of the worst hits that were taken was more on the like personal side. Like I couldn't really hold a relationship. I know I burned a lot of bridges and broke a lot of hearts that way because I'm one of those guys where, and there may be some pushback on this, but I think when I'm sober, I'm a very good husband. I'm a very good man. I'm a very good friend. I truly feel that way. But when I'm drinking, I will lie. I'll steal. I'm deceitful. I'll lie right to your face. And I think a lot of that has to do with what we were talking about earlier, where when that alcohol would get in my body, it would do something different. I couldn't figure out what it was, but there's people. I've got friends of mine that can go out to like a networking event where it's like a cocktail happy hour, and they can have one drink, socialize with people, put it down, pick up one or two waters to flush it all out, drive a couple hours later, and they're fine. I was not like that. When it hit my lips or it hit my nose, whatever it was, I had to go all in until it was gone. And so I think the friendships there suffered a lot worse because there was probably a lot of people that I hurt that I might not even remember. And so that's stuff that I'm really trying to work on. And I do a lot of that stuff with my sponsor now because I'll think about stuff. And so in your steps of AA, like your fourth step, you're making a list. And then in your fifth step, you're actually going through with another man and like going through that list of all this like really messed up stuff you've done. And I'll still have stuff pop up now that I'm like, oh man, I forgot all about that I did this. So I'll just immediately call him and be like, hey, I got something for you, and I'll go ahead and get it off of my chest, and he'll be like, all right, man, pray about it, and then it's gone. You can't hold it in anymore. Like that's it. It's out. Do you ever try
to repair those relationships or call the people and try to ask for forgiveness there, or do you just kind of just keep that to yourself, or what's the process for that?
Well, I did a lot. I did a lot of that, especially like going through some of the steps in AA, because like when you get towards the end of your 12-step work, there's that same list. When you get into your 9th step, you're actually like having to make those amends. And normally working with a sponsor, you kind of find out like, all right, is this something that maybe I've already done my part to clean up the side of the street, or should I call them? Should it be a letter? I wrote a lot of letters.
Did you mail them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. And so
I know some people like write the letter and then like they'll burn it or throw it away.
Yeah,
like,
and I know some people will do like a God box. They'll like write stuff in this God box and then like either put it up on a shelf and then they can never look at it again, or burn it. That probably wouldn't be good for me to have a God box. Like it might just combust because of all the evil.
You really believe that?
I don't know. I run my mouth about it a lot. But I'm grateful that it's all out there now because I don't have any secrets anymore. Like, and it's such a liberating feeling because I don't have to worry about what lie I told my wife so that I can keep that lie going. I don't have to remember about what lie I told a friend or a business partner so I don't get caught up in that lie. So, being able to practice that rigorous honesty and just surrender the outcome, whatever it may be, and understand that it's not in your control anymore has been really nice.
What do you think made you like that? Like, why were you like that for so many years, do you think?
I don't even know that I realized how bad it was. And I think a lot of people may be in that position that they don't realize really how bad off they are, or that I could always control it. That the reason I was getting to the point where I was is because I wanted to, not that it was like something that was out of my control. So having that realization that like, oh shoot, I can't handle myself was a whole different experience. But man, I would probably say it was just maybe just over time, as you're lying and being deceitful and stuff, you become numb to what you're actually doing, and it becomes easier and easier to do that because it's no different than the first time I got populated into a jail cell. I was terrified. I didn't want to be there. Like, I was like, oh, these are real thugs. Like, I thought I was tough, running around with a gun and stuff, but then I get into the back of this maximum security pod and I'm like, oh, these are like real thugs. Like, these guys are going to prison for real. But every arrest after that, easier, to the point where when I did my longest little straight sentence, which was like, it was a 12-month sentence, I did like 8 of it, which that's petty time to some people, but other people are like, hey, I've never done over 24 hours in a holding cell. So it's all relative. But, you know, those 8 months that I did was the easiest time I ever did.
Why?
And I had lost everything.
Why do you think that was?
I think because I truly wanted to learn a lesson in that situation. Because when I finally got that 12-month sentence, I was selling cars at the time. I wasn't really paying my bills. I was trying to live this more vibrant lifestyle than I actually had. And so I had a car, I had a boat, I had a storage unit that had like a 2-bedroom apartment worth of stuff in it. I had a ton of like 80s and 90s collectible baseball cards, like all kinds of stuff, signed balls, all this stuff from a kid. I had a coin collection that was my grandfather's that had like every wheat penny from, I think it was the PDS and then the blank mint, whatever. It's like the 4 mints where they make coins. It was like a penny from the late 1800s all the way up to the 1960s from every mint, at least one of them. So it was a lot of really valuable stuff. And I let every bit of that go because every time I got in trouble, my parents would be like, all right, what bank's your car through? What bank's this? How do we pay this? How do we pay this? And so I'd be over here in trouble with no money and would be having my parents pay these different accounts that I had so that I didn't lose everything. But then after I got out of trouble, I would just go right back to what I was doing. So I think in that time, I really wanted to make myself hit what would be my rock bottom then in hopes that it would teach me a lesson, and it didn't.
Why do you think that is?
I don't think that God was ready for my rock bottom yet. Like, I think it was one of those where he was fine with me thinking.
You weren't ready or God wasn't ready?
I don't think God was ready for...
Oh, really?
For my, well, maybe. I don't know. But I think it was not my time to hit that. Or maybe I wasn't the type of person I needed to be teed up for what I'm doing now. You know, maybe if I had gotten clean and sober back then, I wouldn't have been able to... have the interactions that I've had that make my sobriety so much more worth it now. So that's literally the only thing I can think is that I had to go through more crap.
Well, it wasn't really rock bottom.
It wasn't. And it felt like it at the time until it got deeper.
Yeah, and I think you were telling me at lunch, about some people that have passed away in your life. I know that when you said you were in jail, you said you lost a friend, right? Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about that and who he was and why that impacted you so much.
Yeah, so I had a good buddy of mine. It was Christian solely, and we ran around. We did everything together. But I mean, when I say everything, like we drank, we fought. We did what guys do. I mean, literally, him and I would take our shirts off, put mouthpieces in, and like full swing box each other because we wanted to make sure when we did get into a fight somewhere, we were in prime shape to be able to handle business. So like we were constantly just wearing it. I broke his ribs over here one time. It was not good.
So you guys were literally practicing for something that might happen with each other.
But like really hurting each other.
Like, yeah. Oh, that's smart. Yeah.
But we were close, man. It was one of those where I looked at him like a little brother, and then so when I got locked up, it was like maybe January or February of 2016, and they were changing over all of the visitation systems in the jail, so you actually had to go through and get pre-approved for a visitation, and then they were all like virtual visits, and I think they were trying to do that because they were trying to look if anybody was visiting people that might have active warrants, because I've got a really funny story we should touch on about one of the other ones that passed away. When he came to see me, he actually got picked up by the police after our visit. But so Christian and I were tight, though. We spent a lot of time together. I mean, he lived not far from where I was living at the time, so we spent a lot of time together. And he kept trying to come see me, but couldn't get approved for his visitation. And then he ended up buying a crotch rocket. And then in May of 2016, he was hit by a car on the crotch rocket and never saw him again. And so I remember getting the phone call in jail, and my mom told me, and I hung the phone up, and I just turned around and walked back to my cell. And if you have to cry in jail, you do it in the shower. And so I turned the water on, get in the shower, and there was a buddy of mine. I don't even like to say buddy because he's doing about 15 years in prison right now. Acquaintance, yeah. And so He knew something had happened, so he gave me 5 minutes, and then he came and was smacking the shower curtain, and he's like, dry it up, you've got time to do. And he was right. And so we're trying to get the jail to let me out on a like a family emergency situation. Yeah, like an bereavement. And they were like, pretty much, unless it's like your mom or your dad, you're not going. And so missed the funeral, but I was able to write a note home for my mom to read at the funeral, so I was still able to kind of speak at the funeral. But that one was tough, and I think it was because I finally realized that my decisions that I had made landed me in jail where I could no longer control what was going on in the outside world. And so I always held that had I not gotten arrested and been charged with what I did, I might have been out there to keep him from being on the bike that day or even buying the bike. Because he never really rode motorcycles like that. So I felt like no reason to be on a crotch rocket even being hit, because no reason for you to be on that bike. So I beat myself up a lot about
What if he would have talked you into getting on the bike with him?
Then we'd have probably both been dead.
I'm just curious.
And I was that type of person too. I'd be like, hey, you're getting a bike? Shit, yeah, I'll go get one.
So how did it make you feel, being in there, not being able to control any situation, not being able to be there for his family, being in there with a bunch of other, badass adult grown criminals, not being able to show the softer side of you? Like, do you think you're ever able to actually process what actually happened?
I think I did, but I think it took a lot of time after that, because that was the very first stop when I got out of jail that October. I went home, went to the barber shop, and then went straight to the cemetery and kind of had some alone time out there at the cemetery. But no, I think being back in there, you really did have to turn off the outside world, because it was just going to drag you. They would say the same thing about if you're dealing with relationships, girlfriends, family, like whatever's going on outside of these walls, it has to stop while you're here, or you're going to drag the heck out of yourself. There was an old saying, do the time, don't let the time do you. And so that was one thing we really had to do, is when you got up, you were on jail mode and you had your routine that you got into, and, you would talk with some people on the outside, but when I would call home to people and they'd be out at the bar or on the lake or something like that, I'd just be like, all right, well, I'm going to let you go because I got stuff to do in here. And I really didn't, but I just didn't want to hear about what fun was going on out in the world.
What do you think if your friend was still alive, what do you think he'd say about you today?
Man, that's a good one. I think I want to say that he'd be up here working with me. And so I picture stuff like that a lot because, their personality was very similar to mine. And so it really kind of upsets me that they didn't get the chance to experience the greatness in life that I'm getting to, or get to experience when your family's proud of you and when your family's actually like changing because of the changes you're making. That's something their families will never get to see with that particular child. And so that's something that really gets to me. But there's a caveat to that too. What if they had lived and then we all ended up ODing somewhere else? So I truly think that, we talked about it earlier, nothing happens by accident. It's all by design. So even if somebody's life was to pass away at a pivotal moment for us to make a little shift to get us closer to the trajectory of where we're going for this next death to kick us back over here, almost like what's the little pinball
game? Yeah. Like bumper boat.
Yeah,
the rail goes up, right?
And so it may be anything
to kind of keep you in the lane, right?
Yep. And so I'm grateful for where I am today, and I'm grateful that those guys still cross my mind and my heart a lot, but I know that there's a reason that their situation happened. And all I need to do is make sure that I'm continuing to live a life that those guys would be proud of.
Yeah, it's so good. You also were telling me at lunch, you had a stepbrother pass away. Mm-hmm. When was that? Was that before this or after?
That was after that. That was actually in January of 2018, I want to say. He's actually the one. So my stepbrother Caleb, our parents, it's a crazy situation because we grew up with Matt, Caleb, and Whitney Gilbert. We all went to church together in Florida. My parents were actually friends with his parents. We all went to the same church. And then we all used to joke as kids about how cool it'd be. You might have those childhood friends where you're like, man, how cool would it be if we were brothers one day? And then it actually happened because like my dad ended up talking to his mom. They got connected. They were living in North Carolina at the time. They ended up moving back to Georgia. And my stepbrother Matt was a little older than me. I think he was born in March of 89. I was November of 89. So what's that, 8-9 months older than me?
70 months.
But he was constantly in trouble. He was in a lot of trouble in school. And then he went on the run in Georgia after a DUI and moved to his dad's in Florida. So he was actually like highly wanted in the state of Georgia. But he would just very rarely come home. Well, while I was locked up, he had actually had a fall at work because he was doing construction work and fell, and he had his whole stomach like opened up because they had to go put some stuff back together inside of there when he fell off this ladder. And so he was up in Peachtree City visiting his brother and his mom, and so Caleb booked a visitation call with me at the jail because he wanted me to get to talk to Matt. And it asked Caleb, like, hey, is anybody else going to be on the call? And so he didn't think twice about it, and he put his brother's information in there. And then, so we do our visitation call. Matt's on the call. Caleb's on the call. Matt's showing me his scars all stapled up and stuff. And so, we were kind of exchanging some war stories. And then 25-minute visitation gets over, and it ended the call before I could say bye to both of them. So I went from the visitation booth over to the phones that were on the wall, called Caleb just to tell him bye, and when he answered the phone, he goes, hey, I got to let you go. The cops are here for Matt. I was like, what? And then so he just hung up, and I'm like, we can't end on that note. What do you mean the cops are there for Matt? And so like maybe a couple hours later, I call him back again. So come to find out, Bartow County, I guess, waited until that visitation popped up, and then they called Peachtree City Police Department and said, hey, there's a guy at this address. We need you to go pick him up. He's wanted up here in Bartow County. But when the Peachtree City went to pick him up and they saw he was all stapled back together, they called back to Bartow County and were like, nah, we'll get him another time. Like, we don't want him in that condition because then any liability would potentially be on the jail if something happened to him. And so they let him go, and that was the last time he was ever in the state of Georgia. That was what I was telling you was kind of the funny story there.
Okay.
And so just like, man, how the heck did that happen? They just let the whole visitation call go on, and it all went well. He didn't,
that's your stepbrother.
That was my stepbrother. We actually joked at the funeral that he's the only person that beat a warrant in Georgia.
How'd he die?
He was actually, so there was a party. I got the phone call. I was selling cars at a Subaru dealership in Macon, and I got the phone call, and my stepbrother Caleb was just bawling. And so he said, Matt died, but it sounded like Dad died. And I was like, Dad died? And he's like, no, Matt died. And then, because at that time, I was drinking, but I wasn't doing any drugs. I was really trying to focus on being successful selling cars, and I felt like everything came crashing down. So I just told my sales managers, I was like, hey, I'm going to be going to a funeral in Florida. And so he was actually leaving a bonfire party, flipped his truck, and wasn't wearing his seatbelt. So he got ejected and just died on impact.
It's like another automobile accident. Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yep. And then, they never said that any toxicology was done, but I know him, and so I know that not many people that we ran around with would get into a vehicle wreck at 5:30, 6 a.m. and get ejected and not have been hammered. And so I'm pretty confident that he was probably thought he was good, lost control, and just...
How'd that make you feel?
Well, at that time, I was super devastated because at this point I feel like I'm trying to get my life back together and stuff just keeps happening and just being piled on me. So at the time there was a guy at the dealership that I was selling cars with, and I was bringing him to this dude to buy some cocaine. And so when I would bring him down there, he would ask me, he'd be like, you want to hit some? I guess it's the drug courtesy thing to do, see if anybody wants a bump, you know? And so he's like, do you want? I kept like, nah, man, I'm good. And then so this particular day, it had to have been within a week of that death call. He's like, do you want to hit some? And I'm like, yeah, man, like, let's do it. And when it hit my face again, I was just like, yep, here we go. And then that's what triggered the most recent like cocaine addiction that I had was, you know, I always told myself that it didn't have anything to do with Matt's passing that got me back onto cocaine, but I do think it was kind of a trigger that made it okay for me to be like, yeah, let's try it and see. But it was rough because at that point, now I started questioning, you know, because I'm in my late 20s. Now I start questioning, why are all my friends dying before 30? You know, why are the ones that are around me dying? What does my life mean that I'm not dead? Like, and then so you start having all those questions like, why me?
What have you learned about yourself over the last 2 years since you've been, you know, more, I guess, sober and more aware? And
yeah, man, I actually made a post about it on Facebook maybe a month ago. And it might not have even been a month ago. It might have been right before Christmas. But I'm starting to see now why. And it's very motivating. It gives me a lot of fuel to keep pushing forward because I used to say, like, well, why didn't I die? Why didn't this overdose kill me? You know, why didn't these pills take me out? And then now my DMs are always open. I get people that'll hit me up and they'll be like, hey, I'm struggling with this. What did you do? I mean, even your multiple 7-figure business owners that are in the roofing space, I've had a few that I'm pretty close with that'll be like, hey, I'm struggling with this. What did you do? Like, I think I need to stop this. And so now I went from somebody who people didn't even want to be around to now I can be somebody that they lean on when they're like, hey, I'm feeling like this is causing an issue in my life. What do I do to get that? And at least I can give them my experience, strength, and hope to see if I can help them see the light at the end of the tunnel to get out of that situation they're in. And so now, looking back on it, I wouldn't trade anything that has happened or anybody that's passed away because I think the lives that my life is going to save by being able to stand on this soapbox and talk about the stuff without any worry about it coming back on me, I think is going to make it all worth it and will save many more people than were lost.
So, well, I guess what is your process? So like, you know, because everyone has a different experience. What do you tell somebody that's struggling? Like if somebody's listening right now to this and they're struggling with alcohol or drug addiction and they feel like they're in that bottomless pit that you were in, right? Or like maybe they're not aware. Maybe they're starting to think right now, like, oh man, do I have a drinking problem, right? Like they're starting to, because if they're listening to this right now and they either could be in the middle of a little binger, right? Or they could have had one last night or the week before, or they could have had some pain with their wife or their kids or their business or something bad could have happened, right? They could have, and now they're starting to think like, man, like I could end up like Taylor. I could, worse, I could end up like, you know, Taylor's stepbrother's Taylor's best friend, right? And they want to stop. They want to change their life. Like, what is the process for that?
I'll normally tell people because I still feel so early on in my sobriety. I almost feel like I'm being fake when I'm giving people like sobriety advice.
Like imposter syndrome.
Yeah, like I struggle with that a lot because I'm like, man, I'm not the best doing it. There's so many other people you could reach out to before me. But do I say that? Heck no. I do what I can to try and help these guys. But normally what I'll tell them is I'll give them a glimpse into my background and I'll say, hey, when I was in your shoes, here's what I did. You know, and mine was AA and getting into a program of recovery. And AA is not for everybody. Some people are like, oh, AA is a cult, you know, maybe, but it's a cult that keeps a lot of people sober. And so I usually tell them, I'm like, first thing I would recommend doing is try and stop. Just take a little time and see if you can stop drinking. And then if you can, maybe you're not an alcoholic, or even maybe try and scale it back a little bit. Say, honey, we're going to go out drinking tonight. You know how I normally get a little crazy on liquor? Help me stick just to beer and let's try and go that route. Like, see if you can scale yourself back, because that's stuff that I was trying to do. And then I'd be over there sneaking liquor shots at the bar, and it's like, oh yeah, this is a little different. And then if that's one of those where you're able to be like, no, I can't stop, then you've really answered that question for yourself. And then it becomes, is it actually prohibiting you from getting to the next level? Because there's some functioning alcoholics that, yeah, it may cut their life short, but they're doing really well. So it's like, what do you really say to these guys?
When you say they're doing really well, what do you mean by that?
I would say on the surface doing well. Like, maybe they have the money, they have the cards.
But is that what's doing well is? I mean,
I think some people would say that, but I think the happiest I had ever been in my life was when I was sober and I was working night shift at a yarn mill, making about $9 to $11 an hour. You know, I had consistently about $1,000 in checking, and then in savings, and then I would keep a couple $100 in checking, and then whenever bills had to be paid, I'd transfer them over, and then I'd transfer money back into savings. And that was probably when I was just the most happy per se. And so, but I don't know, man, because as far as, you know, defining on the surface what it would mean to be happy, I think that's all an internal thing, because there's some people, they don't want to be a millionaire in order to be happy. And I think if you're not happy without $1 million, you're not going to be happy with the $1 million, you know? And I think it's the same thing when people say like, well, when I get rich, I'll give. When I do this, I'll do this. If you're not going to give a dime out of a dollar, you're not going to give $100,000 out of $1 million. So, I mean, that's kind of what I'm trying to get squared away in my life, is exactly what that success looks like. And that success to me is to be able to make sure that I have a happy wife at home, because she supports everything that I'm doing. And if I gain the world and lose those that are closest to me, then that's going to be a nightmare for everybody, because all that's going to do is lead me back to a drink that's going to then ruin my life. And so mine's more, if it takes me a couple years longer to achieve my goals because I hang it up at 7 p.m. to be present at home with my wife, that's a risk I'm willing to take, because I'm happy at home and it's leading to a good marriage so far.
Has there been any struggles or any hurdles? You know, because that's one of the probably key relationships in your life, I would imagine, in anybody's life, right? Is your spouse or your partner.
Yep.
What's been some of the ups and downs as she's kind of watched you navigate that? From what you tell me, you know, she's not that she's perfect, but like, you know,
she's doing well. She's doing well
compared to you. She's kind of on a linear straight path, like it's parabolic, right?
Yeah,
like
I'm not really sure hers ever.
She doesn't have like the, you know, the stock market like ticker symbol.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
She's more like chew.
Yeah, I was 1920 stock market for sure. But man, I would probably say, because yeah, she's been super pivotal, and it was almost like where opposites will truly attract. And so I think her just pouring into me when I was at my lowest, because I mean, really kind of before that, when I first met my wife, she just sent me a message on Facebook one day and was just like, hey, have you been to Nashville? And I'm just like, no. And I think I was telling y'all at lunch, like when I was looking at her profile, it was a private profile, so I could just see her profile picture, and I think it was like her on a cruise ship or something. And so everything about it was screaming like it was a catfish, right? And so I kind of blew it off, and then a few days later, I was up one day doing some cocaine, and I wanted somebody to talk to. So I start messaging back and forth with her, and then as I'm talking to her, I realize I can dive in a little bit deeper of stuff that I'm really dealing with, because a lot of the women that were coming into my life at the time, they may have kids, they may not, but when they found out like, hey, I'm a struggling cocaine addict, they're out. And so there was nothing I could tell her that she thought any differently about me. Like anything in my past, anything that I was doing at the time, she's just like, oh, well, what do you need to talk about that? And that was so new to me, because like I was not really raised in a family where like men talked about anything. And I think that the world we're moving into now is it's starting to be a lot more acceptable for men to be able to be vulnerable and talk about things they're dealing with so that they don't put a gun in their mouth. And so that was probably the biggest thing she was able to do. Is I didn't think I was ever going to meet her. So I'm just like telling her all of my deepest, darkest secrets. And she's just, it almost made her love me more. And I was even thinking like, hey, maybe I'm like some project to her, you know, and like she wants to be able to fix me up. And it really wasn't, you know, it was just, we came into each other's lives at a particular time for a reason. She even jokes that she was in her previous marriage for like 7 years hating life because I wasn't screwed up enough yet for us to start talking. So she's like, you made me sit through that marriage. Like, we joke about it. She's like, I had to sit through this terrible marriage until you were tough enough for us to, you know, get into a relationship. But yeah, she's definitely been the rock for sure.
What are you struggling with now?
I have a lot of goals and aspirations, but, you know, like our guy Hunter talks about, like there's a lot of people that are millionaires that time just hasn't lapsed yet in order for that to actually come to fruition. Because, okay, when you set these goals and you put in this work, there's a third factor there, which is that time has to pass. And that's probably the biggest struggle I have, is because now that I am making better decisions and moving more in a forward manner in my life, I mean, I've got a mission where I'm going to move the needle a little bit forward every day. Even if that means like we're just going to get up and do something, we're going to move the needle forward. That way we're not falling back at all. And so I would say keeping myself focused and disciplined on doing the day-to-day activities that are going to continue to move that needle, and give myself some grace that time still has to pass. Because, you know, I'm like, man, I'm the type of person that can run a $10 million company right now, but I don't have a $10 million company right now because time has to pass. We have to still do the work. I might mentally be the person that can handle that, but we still have to put in the work to get to there. So that's the main thing that I'm struggling with, is just having some grace on myself to let time pass and keep putting in the work.
How often do you think about your past and maybe are you tempted to, like, you know, have a drink or do some drugs or to escape, right? Because I believe through my own experiences that those are just avenues for us to escape, right? Mm-hmm. And we're trying to fill a hole, right, in our heart usually. And we kind of just pile in, you know, bad stuff to kind of like patch it up for a little bit. And then it like blows up and destroys, and there's another pit, and you try to fill it up again. And it's this constant like shoveling act, right? Whether we do that with drugs and alcohol or with business, right? Or even helping others, right? I mean, listen, I think AA is great. I think all these communities, all these groups, these masterminds, all this stuff, right? It's all a version of that, right? AA was like the first mastermind.
Right. Yeah.
And so I sometimes think, you know, and I'm speaking from my own experience, it's like, man, like that's the new addiction. Now that's probably a little safer, but what I found in my life is that the more I'm trying to do instead of just be. And now I'm trying to figure out how to just to be. Instead of trying to always achieve, and like, because I feel like that's never served me. I've never just been able to sit still, and be. So now I'm on this mission of like, all right, how almost like how slow can I go? Like, and have like Gary Vee talks about like macro patience, but like, you know, doing things with intent, like on a micro, like everyday level, right? Like hustling every day. But having like no regard for like macro time, and trying to like, you know, and trying to negotiate with myself, and then trying to like be aware of like, oh, is this just another addiction? Like, am I like, you know, am I trying to build a $10 million company for Ben because Ben needs to fill that up? Like, and I always try to figure that out. Like, what's right? Like, so how do you feel? Like, what goes through your head?
That's
like, share the thoughts.
Yeah, that's a tough one, man. Now, it doesn't really cross my mind to drink or use any drugs. Occasionally.
It's because you're too busy selling roofs now.
Right. Well, but now occasionally like when we went to the couples retreat in the Dominican this past year.
That looked like a lot of fun, man. I saw some good pictures. Man. Yeah.
Some good stuff. But then like you have all these couples that are swimming over to the swim up bar, and like I'm swimming up to get these little virgin pina coladas, and Miami Vice. We were drinking the heck out of these like virgin Miami
so you're
Vices.
Die of sugar overdose.
Yeah, 100%. I'm still jittery from that. Yeah, it's a worse drug than alcohol. So like during times like that, but I remember talking with Ty Backer down there.
Love that guy.
Awesome
I need to get him on the show.
That'd be a good one.
Yeah, he's awesome.
And so I was talking with Ty, and I said, man, doesn't it suck that, you know, when we're alcoholics, we'll look over at the bar and we'll always be like, man, I wish we could drink like that. And Ty just laughed and said, it goes away. And then that was what the conversation was. And I'm just like, huh. But that gave me a little bit of hope from somebody who's been in recovery a long time that like, hey, these little like impulse thoughts that we get are not going to last forever the further you're away from them. So, you know, that helped me a lot because I'm like, interesting. Like, I don't have to worry about how cool it would be to casually drink at the airport knowing that I would have showed up here blacked out, you know? And so there are people that they can go have their little casual drink, but I do have to be very conscious of not finding another filling for that void, like you're saying, whether it be business or personal development, you know, or spending money on personal development. Because, you know, you think AR's messed up now, wait until you're overspending and you don't realize it, and then you find out. And so I think that's why I try and lean on guys that have been through it, as well as kind of your coaches and your consultants too, and just be like, hey, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm doing, but here's my goal is to be able to be at home with my wife and do this stuff. Because like I have a drive to be successful, but like I also have that battle of, like you and I said, throwing on sweats and being on the couch with the wife. But like you and I both know we couldn't make it 12 hours doing that. You know, we got
maybe once a year.
Yeah, well, we got snowed in Nashville a couple years ago in February, and I think we were snowed in for 5 days. And I'm literally outside just walking through the snow because I'm like, I've got to get out of here. But you couldn't do any sort of roofing, so
I got a test for you.
Okay, come on with it.
How about I did a silent retreat for 4 days in Boone, North Carolina, at the Art of Living with Brittany and you know.
Was it put on by any like Buddhists?
Yeah. Okay, well, it's kind of like the Art of Living. It's Guru Dev, an Indian. You know, I don't know. I think he's Buddhist. You know, in meditation and you know, mindfulness and kind of finding your inner self. Mm-hmm. But that's talk about like, you know, trying to like just talk to your wife and hang out on the couch for 12 hours and watch movies and have a chat. How about trying to sit there and not talk at all, not allowed to read, not allowed to listen to music, not allowed to do anything, and just be with yourself.
Right. So
right.
What do you do?
See, that's what I mean, dude. Like, we're so programmed and we are so conditioned. Remember I was telling you on the way here about like our actual spirit, like because of our brain, it protects us, and we have to, a lot of us do stuff to kind of settle ourselves down because we're always in this need of like achievement or have to go.
And that dopamine hit too.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, man. And so, you don't do anything except for go inside yourself and think about really like who you are, block out all the noise. And it takes a little while, right? And I mean, you have to do some work ahead of time. I wouldn't actually recommend, I actually think it can be dangerous to send people to a silent retreat without having them do some pre-work before and getting them used to meditation and getting them used to kind of like, you know, being still with themselves and no distractions, because it's kind of like remember you're like dope sick. Remember like how you get dope sick or alcohol, like where you need like a little something to like just kind of make you normal.
100%.
It's no different, man.
So you're like, I gotta
go talk, or I gotta go do something. I gotta go look at my phone. I gotta call somebody at work.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's the same feeling. And then when I realized that, I realized it's not about the drugs. It's not about the alcohol. It's not about me wanting to go work. It's about me loving myself and being able to be able to hold myself and hold space for myself and just appreciate me. But most of us, we don't like who we are inside enough, so we always are doing everything else to trying to kind of like
distract ourselves
to not deal with
really
to not deal with that, or to not to like it's just a distraction. And so then we find things of the world, I believe, to be able to fill that time or take up that space, right? Because we kind of constantly, and then the worse you get, the worse it gets, right? And it kind of perpetuates until you can come to a place of awareness and kind of unpack that. But it's I mean, talk about like that's the ultimate drug. Like silence. And peace.
My meditation journey actually started about 6 months ago.
How'd you get into that? Let's talk about that for a minute.
Oh man. So I'm in Revolt, love those guys, and then I'm in a group called The Program.
Original name.
I know, right? Yeah. I think it's hilarious because I always say like, get with the program, and that's what sticks in my head every time I hear it. But it's all about, so we have a code that we all follow, and that code is truth. And so T is trust the process. R is results matter. U is uphold the standard. T is take care of your brothers. H is honor your word. So, we do weekly goal setting. We have 2 calls a week, one on Wednesday, one on Friday. One's a roster call. Friday's like the what the F call. And so we just kind of go over different stuff. It may be a coaching call. It may be one particular member's dealing with something that gets brought up, and it turns into like almost a hot seat session with what we can all do to try and provide some guidance in that situation. But one of the things that we do is, like on 75 Hard, they have the tasks that you have to do every day. So we do what's called COG. So it started out represented by a cog. So that's where they got the COG part. But then he's like, you can't put a bunch of dudes around something that says cog and them not think of like sexual innuendos to make jokes out of it with. So now it's COG and CIOGI. And what that is, you have the acronym for COG, which can either be your cost of greatness or calling of God, whatever you want that COG to mean, but it's like your 8 daily tasks that you're doing every day. So it's 2 areas in your faith, 2 areas in your family, 2 areas in your fitness, 2 areas in your finances. So in the faith domain, it's a lot of meditation and journaling. And then they get into a lot of the different brain frequencies, and we talked about Joe Dispenza. And so
Joe Dispenza.
I do a ton of meditation with alpha brain waves. I do a lot like of the Om frequencies. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah, do that down at the Art of Living.
The Tibetan flute, like while I'm journaling, is a lot of fun to have going on. And then obviously all of your like chakra frequencies and stuff.
Look at you, buddy.
Man, I'm telling you, I'm trying to get there, man.
We're an hour in. We're just getting to chakra frequencies.
I know. So like,
what's all the people? Here's what I want to know. Okay. What about all the old buddies that I don't know if you still have any of your old buddies from over 2 years ago. Do you still have anybody in your life that's like that you used to party with that like is still around?
I have some.
No, when they hear this, do they know about the chakra frequency?
No, I don't think so.
Why not?
Now, I think it's because I don't talk to them as much. The guys that I'm around now and like my work and stuff like that, they well know about it. Now, even my mom deals with a lot of tremors, which are almost like a mild Parkinson's, I think. But I've been showing her a lot of studies with frequencies where when you have anything like that going on, it's typically some sort of like neurological short. And so if you can get that frequency back right, that it can actually ease some of that stuff away, and that there's a lot of actual physical ailments that can be healed with frequency, and like what you and I were talking about, and a lot of putting your mind behind it. Because like literally I'll do meditations, and if I'm sore, I'll like breathe in and envision that I'm like breathing in healing, and you'll like move it over to these other parts of your body. And it's crazy how much it may be like I'm still in that weird stage because I'm so early in, but it's almost like you can feel some of that stuff, or you almost go through, let's say you got a soreness in your leg. You're like, all right, I'm going to bring this energy through here, and then we're going to grab this soreness and move it out of our feet into the ground.
And you believe this stuff works, correct?
I 100%.
And I know that it works.
I used to think it was woo.
Sure, of course. So if it can work to heal you, if your brain can work to heal you, your brain can also work to destroy you.
100%.
And do you believe that most of us, I'd say 90, I don't know, make up a statistic, 97% of us, grow up, and not being aware because no one has the education around this. No one, no one talks about this type of stuff. We're not even literally talk about our feelings, let alone like talk about how brain waves can heal us.
Right.
But that same brain can also destroy us. And I think that I'm looking forward to the next 10 years because I believe that with technology and the way that we can transfer information faster, transfer these stories of healing and transfer just the knowledge, right? And I think if you can combine that with like the heart and you can kind of start to put this together, I feel like we can, I think that you are going to see an improvement in society.
I agree with that.
I also believe at the same time that you're also going to see half of society or a part of society actually get worse at the same time, right? And you're going to see more of a polarization, which I believe that we're seeing it now to a degree. But I do believe that hopefully through stories like yours and the different information that comes out, because everyone's kind of on their own journey, right? Whether it's if you read Joe Dispenza, you're just reading about his own personal experiences and his own journey. And like he's got a lot of science behind, a lot of data. I mean, millions and millions of dollars of research over the last 20, 30 years.
And it makes
retreats.
sense.
I mean, like he's got experiences, you know what I mean? And then you combine that with some of the stuff you learn from like Tony Robbins and then just like, and then some of the stuff that we're learning from these guys over in the eastern part of the world, India and some of those areas. It's like, it is fascinating how everything's right here. We just have to connect all the dots to kind of figure out what I think is you can kind of develop like that heaven on earth.
I agree.
But like we have to connect the dots, right? And I think today's part of that, because here's the thing. When you say it's woo-woo, like I hear you, because some of the people that are listening to me right now are like, wow, Benny, you're off the deep end right now.
Right.
Like what drugs are you on? Right. And at the end of the day, like I understand where they're coming from. Like I get that. But I guess I'm more speaking to the people that have a slight awareness, right? Maybe they're not completely all the way awake, but they're kind of teetering, right? Kind of like that time when you were in that hotel room, right, during RoofCon, right? Like you were kind of teetering, right? Like it's like you kind of knew, you kind of didn't know. It's kind of like when you have the goggles on and it's kind of muddy, but then the wipers come on. It's starting to get a little clear, but it's still kind of foggy.
I see something here.
And you're just trying to figure that out. But like I think it's interesting because I think that guys like you, guys like me, we're going to be able to get through to some of our people, like from maybe the past, that because those people are watching. Believe it or not, whether you talk to them or not, they're watching. There's people that listen to my podcast, I guarantee you right now, from back in my old life, that I guarantee are watching and listening to this podcast. They're probably afraid to reach out and say anything because they don't know what to say.
Right.
I want you to say something, right? I want you to message. I want you to reach out because there's a lot more inside of us.
It's
that we still haven't even realized. What's next for you, man?
Man, I'll touch a little bit on some of the frequencies and stuff because there's a reason. If you read that Stealing Fire book, I highly recommend it.
Who wrote it?
Man, I left my phone in the other room.
That's
I'll look and see, but it's called Stealing Fire. It's on Audible, but it talks about how a lot of your big Silicon Valley people, your Google CEOs, like these folks came up at these Burning Man festivals where they were taking these different types of illicit drugs to open up different parts of their mind, and down to these chambers that are apparently in some Navy SEAL training facilities where they'll actually go into like sound deprivation chambers or something where they have to go internal, because there's a reason that the SEALs can just change their mindset like immediately because they've just been trained through all this. So we've got those same brains. So like it's almost a biohack now that I've started to figure this out and started this journey, because like if I have a business problem that I'm trying to deal with, I know we weren't going to talk about business, but even life works too. Get out your journal, put in like some alpha binaural beats, close your eyes, 10, 15 minutes later, when you come out of that and you start journaling, you'll solve your problem. And so that's like little stuff that I'll do. So, but what I would say is next for me is Well, I've got a really nice framework that we've laid out for the company. So it's going to be staffing up this location. And I've always heard that people have that trouble breaking through that $10 million threshold in their companies. They kind of talk about it just into a different level. And so my logic is, hey, let's get an $8 to $10 million company built out, running very nicely, staffed up, and then let's go replicate that, and then replicate that, and then potentially have it bound up with 2 or 3 locations where we can try and get on the private equity train, see if we can make a big exit. I think if we made a big exit, I would probably try and get into software development or some sort of SaaS type systems where I love a lot of the CRMs that are in the industry, but I think a lot of them, if they could almost combine and to make one just really nice.
But why? But why do it? But why do all that?
I think it's the puzzle. I think it's just overcoming problems and fixing those problems, and just to be able to kind of transform lives along the way. I know that's our passion on the roofing side, is I want to be able to get people in that can feel comfortable working with us, but also want to be a part of something greater than themselves, where we're able to give back to the community, we're able to serve the community, and we're also able to transform our lives at home, because I think too many companies focus on strictly financials and revenue to gauge success. And I think if we can build a company that focuses more on that faith, family, and fitness area, their finances will come. So I think if we can get them aligned spiritually, whatever that is, it could be, the camera, but as long as they have something that's outside of themselves.
Do you think that? Do you believe that?
Not really.
Oh, then why'd you say that?
Not really.
Then why'd you say it?
Well, a lot of people say your higher power can be anything.
But you got a guy that you got a guy that's listening to you right now.
Yep.
That looks up to you. Mm-hmm. They're literally watching this podcast, not because of me, because of you. Because they're like, wow, I want to hear what Taylor has to say. And you really you're going to tell them that the camera could be their higher power, and but you don't actually believe that. I could tell it in your eyes and the way you said it that you didn't really believe it. So why did you say it?
Well, I always heard that your higher power could be whatever it wanted to be. Me personally, God works for me.
So why not call that out?
I don't know. Maybe it's you try and wonder what other people would think if you profess God.
Does it matter?
It doesn't. Well, maybe if I hit it, it may matter a little bit.
That's what I'm saying. But do you think what's the downside of saying that rather than trying to take a more passive, God can be anything type of thing? Mm-hmm. I'm just asking.
That makes a lot of sense. I don't know. Maybe it's. Maybe it's something that you struggle with, or maybe that I struggle with as far as trying to be liked by too many people.
I mean, you just told people about the chakras and it's woo-woo, and you might be afraid to say that God is my higher power. I'm just asking.
That's a good point.
I'm just asking.
Makes complete sense to me.
I'm just curious because,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know for me personally, God works. I know some people that will go universe route, but I think as long as somebody has something.
But who made the universe?
For me, God, for sure.
What about to them? What about the people? Is there people that think the universe made God? I don't know. I'm just asking.
I'm sure that there's what have I heard? Because I know.
Well, there's a lot of stuff out there.
Big Bang theories.
But who created the Big Bang?
I don't know.
It's a different podcast.
Yeah. True.
Let me ask you this as we wrap this show up.
Yeah, man.
Who is Taylor Ammons?
We talked about this a little bit because we always have okay, this is my body. These are my hands, my brain. We joked about this on the way here, but who is the my? Even when you're thinking about consciousness, personality, it's my consciousness. So I have this physical body, but Taylor now is somebody that can be depended upon, trustworthy, wants the best for people, a true, genuine human. And I want people to know that if there's anything you're struggling with, that there's hope, and that hope is sitting here getting to talk to you.
How do you want to be remembered?
I want to be able to impact thousands of people through my sobriety and my journey to give those struggling hope for a better day.
And is there anything that we didn't talk about that you wish we would have talked about today?
I felt like we did a pretty good job. We probably could have gone deeper in chakras.
But is there let me ask you this, because like I know a lot of guys are afraid to go into the unknown. Mm-hmm. What do you wish we would have talked about and went deeper on? Maybe something you mentioned, maybe something you didn't mention.
Well, and I know earlier we kind of went into some childhood traumas and stuff like that.
You want to talk about that?
We can. I'm down.
Tell
it ain't
me.
never been talked about.
Tell me about it.
And so, yeah, so earlier at lunch, we were chit-chatting, and Benny had made a comment about, we were trying to draw a definitive line or draw some sort of correlation, correct me if I'm wrong here, back to maybe any childhood traumas that could have led towards the fact that, because really to back that up a little further, we were trying to figure out, like, why I was drinking, like, why drinking and drugs. And then it went to, I like how it feels.
Why numb it out? Why escape?
It's like, well then,
what are you escaping from?
Let's think a little bit deeper. And then so, I was telling Benny that I'm going to have to try and get with my family, because I remember a situation as a kid where we had a babysitter, and I remember like the babysitter, like my sister and me, and it was almost like playing, I think you would call it like playing house or playing doctor, where you're like trying to.
I don't know what happened. I'm just trying to get you to tell me what happened.
Yeah, and so
what do you think happened?
Well, like I remember, she was a little older. She had to have been like maybe an early teen. I think I was 7 or 8. Maybe my sister might have been 10 or 11. But I remember like us. I feel like I remember like maybe me touching it. It might have even been my sister. Might not have even been in, like maybe it was me and the babysitter or something. But it's almost one of those. I don't know if excited's the right word, but I'm really interested in diving into that, because like I don't really remember exactly what all happened.
And why do you think that is?
Probably not wanting to accept that something happened as a kid, or maybe even more so, you don't want that to end up being a direct correlation back to anything that happened. And then, are your parents going to beat themselves up that you were with this person? I could see that. I'm not a parent, but I could totally see it like, man, did I do something? And so it'll definitely be worth tapping into. I don't even remember who this babysitter was. I know she was a chick. That's all I remember. But no, it'll definitely be something to dive into and work on, because I think if I can put some meditations behind that and really get down to a root cause, I may be able to uncover some stuff that I didn't even realize until you and I talked. Another reason why I'm grateful to have come.
Yeah. Well, I've learned that, these things happen for us, right? So then that way we can deploy more empathy and grace and forgiveness. Firstly for ourselves, right? Because then that frees us, right? Yep. That frees us to be like authentically who we are without shame, and being able to live fully, with purpose. But more importantly, also to be able to give more understanding to how that affects, how one situation looked at from different angles can affect everybody in that circle, because maybe your sister has a viewpoint, maybe that babysitter has a viewpoint. If you tell your mom and dad about that story, they're going to have a viewpoint, right?
Yep.
And the whole universe, I'll use the word universe, the whole universe.
The camera.
No, seriously, but the whole universe is kind of, it's like a 360 camera, because like there's different viewpoints all the way around.
Yep.
And different things happened as a result of that one instant in time, and it affected lives for forever. Now, how we look at those things is what I find interesting, is because for most of the time, because when we're unaware, we take that pain and we hold that pain. Now, whether we build up that protection armor, like I was talking about. It's like, our brains, we're trying to protect ourselves, right? Yep. We're in survival mode. We are going to protect ourselves, whether we fight, flight, put up armor, this invisible stuff that like we just keep building up over time. And so now we're almost like our spirit is kind of basically letting a robot fly around, kind of wandering around aimlessly, with either this tough guy syndrome or this shy syndrome, or like, it doesn't really matter. It's all because of things that have happened and we didn't know how to appropriately, kind of deal with them. And if we could somehow, this is what I've learned through pain now, especially when I become more aware and I experience pain in real time. Like, let's just say tomorrow something painful happens to me. I've been able to learn how to experience that pain almost in real time and almost heal at the same time the pain is actually happening. To be able to where it doesn't actually hold weight or affect me for too much longer, because I know that doesn't serve me based on the work that I've done, right? And being able to go back in the past and look at situations, turn them around, seeing how it happened for me and through me. And that was actually like a blessing.
Yep.
Like, even when bad stuff happens, like, I'm able, like, it's wild once you start to get that muscle down. And some things are easier than others. Like, real hard pain is actually almost easier for me than milder pain. And I don't know if that's because we also have that driven gene. And so, like, we like the extreme. Like, I actually, like, it's like I almost like do better in the extreme. It's that middle where I'm like still trying to kind of figure out like how to resolve. Like, sometimes that middle pain is like tougher for me. I can handle the extreme pain and I can spin that around quick and live through. People are like, how'd you get over that so fast? They're like, how are you like, how are you smiling? Because there's been some bad stuff that's happened to both of us. And we're like out here like, hey, happy. Like, and people are like, how can you be so happy all the time? Well, I mean, like, another thing is that we've experienced death. Right. Not only through ourselves, but we've also watched other people die. You talked about your stepbrother. My brother got shot in the back of the head in 2021, and I wondered, like, why is God keeping me here to experience that, to lose a brother, to where, it's really affected my, my mom and my dad and my family and my sisters and his wife and his daughter, and it's like, and how do I turn that pain into purpose? And
that's almost the true path to success. Is like,
well, it all depends on what you define success. It all depends on how you define success, though, too. See, I hate that word success because it's a dirty word. Because everyone has a different definition. And it's like, the faster that I've realized that I can't be like you, I can't be like Cody, I can't be like Gary Vee, can't be like Grant Cardone, can't be like, people that we look up to in the roofing industry. The more that I'm just me, the more it's easier to own that and to be free. And then I can like live with, the failure. I think one of the things that we talked about maybe on the way in, like you said, you're afraid of failure. Why?
I think it's because I know that I can achieve truly anything that I set my mind to, and that I know that, and I don't even know if it would be failure that I would be scared of, because failure is going to come, but it would actually be quitting and actually giving up on a dream. And so I think that's probably more of a scare to me, is that one day I'll get complacent and say, you know what, it'll be all right. Let's go back to what I was doing, and tap out almost, when I know that I can do and be anything that I want to be, especially when I keep working on going in personally.
What if you went in personally and you were, it told you to go into the woods of Tennessee and never come out, and what if that's what you found that you're supposed to do, and you're not supposed to do anything?
That'd be a struggle. Because, I mean, and I know some guys that were running pretty successful companies that now do coaching because it was laid on their heart to impact people over build these businesses. And coaching may make some decent money, but not near as much as running an 8-figure company. And so...
Is it always about the money?
I think for some people.
No, sure.
Some people. And no, I think for at least me personally, it's more of like the impact and being able to change lives and help those around me. So I guess I would be open to whatever. Like if the most impact that I could make in the world would be if internally I knew I needed to kind of just go off and be a woods guy.
Well, I'm just saying,
it would be a tough pill to swallow.
But what happens? Because I read a book called The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer, and he was called into the woods in Florida. And what's crazy is he didn't have to go out and chase anything. they all came to him. Somehow, some way, you got to read this autobiography. It's freaking nuts. He built $1 billion company by hanging out in the woods and like nobody even knew. But like somehow people kept coming to him and he kept solving problems, meditating and built a whole huge, you mentioned like you want to start a technology company and stuff like that. Like, I think that's a fascinating book for you to read. I'd love for you to read it and then call me back.
Yeah.
And then
we need to do that
because I think that you'd be surprised. I feel like anytime that we are so addicted, and when I say addicted, I just mean like when we're so like, oh, I can't slow down or I can't stop. Ask yourself why.
Yeah. Well, there's that saying that if you can't find 10 minutes to meditate, find 20. Have you ever heard that? Yeah.
I struggle with meditating on a regular basis. But I also don't know if that makes me, I don't know. I see some guys and girls do stuff just to do it, to check a box too. So like, to me, like if I'm just checking a box and I'm not actually like experiencing what I need to experience, it's like this catch-22. It's like, well, I don't also want to tell myself that so I don't actually do the work either.
Right.
But like, I was talking to Gary Vee, who was on my podcast. It's like, he's developed a process, and I actually believe this because I get glimpses of it myself, is he can actually meditate in real time and experience that because he's so present.
Really?
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
It is fascinating because it's like a space-time continuum, and it's like then it's into the quantum world, and it goes down lots of rabbit holes.
Yeah, I could see that.
Where like he's so present in every situation that he's in that it's actually going so slow to him that it is almost like a meditation. Almost
like he can do other things in real time in that moment.
Yeah, and then that's how he's able to accomplish also so much impact as well. But he's also one of these rare breeds that, he had his mom, just poured in a ton of love, and she rewarded the kindness. Yep. She didn't make him go to school. She didn't like try to get him to be successful. She just wanted him to be kind. And I always see like these little different ingredients that different humans have that make them who they are. And then I try to understand like, who am I, right? And I love the fact that my parents made me exactly who I am, right? Because it was through their experiences of why I'm even able to be here, right? And so when you can look at everything and have gratitude for it, it really is true. I know some of our old boys might think we're a little bit sappy, but like it really worked. It really is genuine. And it's really cool. I really appreciate you being here. I know we were supposed to end like 20 minutes ago, but we just kept on going. Man, I feel like we could go forever.
I do too, man. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate you having me here. It means a lot to me. I'll fly back to Pittsburgh anytime to hang out with you.
That's cool, man. How's somebody wants to get a hold of you? How do they get a hold of you?
So obviously I'm Taylor Ammons on Facebook. I need to look at this. It might be like at the Residential Roofer. I know it's at the Residential Roofer on Instagram and BennyFisher.com. You'll be proud of this because I recently bought TaylorAmmons.com.
There you go.
Yeah, so start working on personal branding and stuff like that. So you had a little influence there.
Did I? Well, I just learned from Mr. GaryVaynerchuk.com. So
yeah, well, it was my coach told me, he's like, hey, I've got NickAlfano.com. You need to go buy TaylorAmmons.com. And then I'd seen your stuff, and so I'm just like, apparently that's kind of one of the next steps, because obviously on this journey I need to be able to put my story out there, like separate it from the roofing business. Yeah.
That's big, to keep your identity completely separate. Yeah. Because when the roofing company's doing good, you're doing good. If the roofing company's doing bad, you're doing bad. Like you don't want to, you want to be able to detach. So that way you're always baseline, right? Yep. Like you always want to be centered. I think the goal is, is to be centered in a way to where you're not, you're void of you're detached from any outcome, because then that way you'll never go back to the old ways, right? Yep. When you're don't have any, necessarily expectations or, because I think it's dangerous when we start to have expectations. Now I think it's good to have goals, and I think it's good to shoot for, I think it's good to have goals towards inputs, but to be almost try to not be as results based and let God do that work. Right. And
that's tough.
Well, it's tough because we've been wired and programmed by all the brainiacs of the world saying, oh, gotta have EBITDA, gotta have this, gotta have that. Right. Because everybody wants that transactional end thing. That's why it's, when people say, talking about building a company for 3 years and exiting, And like, but like they're all going to want to look at your EBITDA and stuff like that.
Right.
But then you said also, like, how are you going to measure working on faith, family, and friends, or fun, or whatever, like faith,
when
family,
there's not
and fitness.
a KPI to track these things.
And again, like, yeah, and that's not that there isn't, but like, are those people going to value what you value?
Right.
And so, because then we got to talk the same language, but they actually want something different.
Yep.
And so now, are you going to build it for them, or are you going to build it for you and the way you think? And so, like, that's a conundrum, right? That I think a lot of people in business are. That's a whole nother podcast, a rabbit trail that we could probably go on to, but we don't want to. We're going to wrap this show up. If you got value out of this podcast and you want to hear more stories like Taylor, subscribe to this podcast. Tell your friends about this podcast. We are trying to get to 1,000 subscribers. We're almost there. We're really close. Thank you for all your help. Leave a comment, leave a question, email me. If you have anything for Taylor, let me know. I'll get you guys in contact. But I really appreciate this, and looking forward to seeing you grow, sir.
Thanks, man.
If there's anything ever I can do to help you out, let me know, brother.
I appreciate that, brother. Thank you.